Right. It's as good as any at the beginning of the talk here. Um, deliver. By the way, the slides are um, uh, the PDF version slides are on the internet now, and they're free. Okay. So, and they were actually in my first slide, but I'm having problems even going back. Oh, okay, good. So if you take a photograph with your camera rather quickly of the this, you'll get the QRs for the slides and the original paper. Okay, go call it a value manifesto. Okay, now there we go. Okay, so simple idea: shift your mentality, shift your focus to delivering tangible, measurable value to your stakeholders. Notice I didn't say your users or customers. That is too narrow. Stakeholders is a much greater quantity of people, organizations, and things that need what we otherwise sometimes call qualities. Okay, so values is what they value, and very often people don't just value money, earning money, saving money. They value qualities. Okay, so values encompasses many things, but a very large part of it is actually uh, qualities. So let's see. There we go. The other idea hiding here is not only shift from what? Well, from things like being agile, doing IT transformations, carrying out a process according to the right rules. Okay. All that stuff is good. But if it does not result in the values people want, you're wasting their time and your time. Okay. So here's the one page overview of the talk where the deliver optimal values efficiently. Now, kind of small print here, so I'm going to go through this in detail with larger print. So don't worry about it. But I'm just trying to say here's the one page summary. And deliver means really give them the value. So it is measurable and they know they have it. Don't say, we're doing agile, so everything's all right. And they said, but it got worse. Okay. Anybody ever experienced an IT system that made life worse for everybody than it was before? Optimal means a good balance for many stakeholders of many different qualities, not just maximizing growth or money or something silly, narrow like that. Values is anything the stakeholders value. And that's quite a wide variety of like a few dozen to a few hundred different things. Value does not translate to value of money, as many people often think. It's, for example, do you value your family? Do you value peace? Right. Very important values. And efficiently is a way of saying you can't get these values at any price, for example, at a cost that is far more than the value, right? So we have to have a notion of, values at profitably, return on investment, and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So I sent the dove on to Ukraine and a few other places that need it, Iran. Okay. Here's the D for deliver. Okay. So deliver means all the necessary planned values. We at some point agree these 10 values are what people want. Okay. And we've got to get it in their hands so they really have it. Not talk about it, not plan it, not give too little of it, give enough of the things we have agreed. The benefits is another good word that could be used here. And actually delivered. They really have it and they retain it. It doesn't disappear after the first euphoria of the first week. It's there next year and the year afterwards, and maybe it gets better and better. And to whom? Well, it's easy. We have hallowed traditions of thinking about users and customers. And those are very important, but it turns out there's a lot of other entities called stakeholders. And like, for example, European law on privacy is a stakeholder. And you'd better deliver that, or they will give you an $800 million fine and shut you out of the market. That's a stakeholder, and their value is upholding the privacy law. Now, in every slide, I'm going to try and give you something more if you want to go deeper. So here is a free book called Stakeholder Engineering for those who want to go really deeply and master the noble trade of worrying about stakeholders instead of mere users and mere customers alone. Okay. And so here's my little question to you. How thoroughly do you analyze your 30 or more stakeholders for your project? And I'm hoping some of you are saying, what? I don't do it at all. 30? You've got to be joking. Okay. So, but if you want to go deep and build up your competence, marketable competence skills as teacher, chief technical officer, or whatever, consultant, then, read the book. It's free. Okay, so the O for optimal. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means the best or most favorable outcome, the one we all want, under conditions of I have too little budget, I have too little time, my organization is totally political and crazy. And it also talks about, try to give a visual diagram of it, but these are different qualities, these are different costs, and they're sort of balanced. They're all within bounds of, pretty much reaching the goals, pretty much better than tolerable. I have a whole book on that too for free called Optima. As Fred Brooks, many of you will know him from the Mythical Man Month and other things, said, and Joseph Duran also pointed out, that architecture and design is not about maximizing, it's about harmony and balance. And I like that. So the harmony and balance is what we mean by optimal. In other words, not getting extreme qualities for ridiculous prices that nobody can or will pay. That's silly. We want sufficient quality to be chosen and preferred and helpful at a price, as Dr. Deming said, at a price the customer can afford. Okay. Okay. So this idea of balance, harmony, sounds good. Those are my values: balance and harmony. My values are not the ridiculous American, call them Trumpian values of taking over the world and maximizing my fortune at the other people's expense. Trump is a good example of not balanced. I probably can't get into the United States after having said that, but what the heck? Stay here in safe little Norway. Now, the value idea, okay. First, we're not interested in absolutely everything a stakeholder values. We're interested in those that are critical to the stakeholder. They really care about it. They really worry about it. They might have some values that are less critical, that are nice to have, as we say, and things like that. We probably aren't going to spend a lot of time and effort satisfying every single desire. But we're going to look at their values and we're going to pick some that are really critical because that's what they will pay us for. Okay. And we will translate those values, which are their needs, into requirements, quality requirements or value requirements. Here's a whole book on value planning for free about how to do that in practice. Okay. And I love the simple idea of critical values and paired with the idea of critical stakeholders. Critical stakeholders are the ones who can kill your entire effort and project and company. They have that power by not buying from you or suing you or closing you off from a market or invading you or something like that. Okay. And this is a method of prioritization. It's to say, what are the critical stakeholders? The top 10. What are the critical values? The top 10 first, prioritization. Okay. So that's the values idea. And then efficiently. Okay. Uh, do you actually design your values in so that when you design them, they use very little money, very little time, and very few people? Okay. Now that's an art I call cost engineering. Here is my free book on the subject with the most advanced methods of dealing with cost, like dynamic design to cost, which happens to be a very advanced agile method if you didn't pick up the word dynamic there. Okay. And that works a lot better than making up a cost estimate, which you know is low, to get it accepted, and then running over the cost estimate by a factor of three, and you're only half done, and then blackmailing your organization to continuing because of the sunk cost of the three times more than they expected. So they have to do another three times more than expected, and then you give them a bad result anyway. That's the ridiculous world we actually live in, according to Ben Flyvberg, who wrote the book How Big Things Are Done, and made that observation that most estimates are a fake news just to get the project running. My view here is that the way we control cost and time and people is by designing low costs in. And many people don't even know what it means to design. They think design emerges from their latest sprint. That's ridiculous. And I have some books on design too, if you're interested in them. But we need to learn to design low cost, not to hope that people will keep on paying us even if we've run over any interesting cost. Okay. So if now efficiency is really qualities or values over costs. Notice qualities or values plural over cost plural, because there are a number of values that you have to deliver for a number of different costs. Our famous problem everybody has with um, uh, uh, having far too much maintenance costs, technical debt, is because we don't actually design our systems to have low technical debt. We focus on just churning out features and functions by the deadline. To hell with the future. We might not even be there. That's very irresponsible. It is not very efficient, and it does destroy entire systems. Okay, so efficiently means giving high set of values for a low set of costs. And the way to do both of those, getting the values you want and the costs you want, is by design. But here's a book on designing the costs to be low. Here's another picture of values. This is from a little thing we call a penta model. Notice the word efficiency is there. Notice values over resources is equal to efficiency. Notice we have the word design there because it's very, very important. There's functionality and scope. Okay. Whole book on the subject if you're interested, but right, I'm using this diagram mainly to say, look, values can be broken down to a set of things. Saving money is good, goes fast, good. But then there are all these qualities like security, usability, safety, reliability, maintainability. That's the technical debt one, and things like that. So, this is where qualities is a part of the values thing. Now, how are we going to do it? Now, you can do it any way you like. Your favorite, you can do it with Scrum or Safe or a hack together methods, or I don't care. But I'm going to give you one concrete suggestion, sort of a default option. If you've got something better, please do it. Tell me about it. But I've got a little booklet of only 20 pages called Value Improvement. Okay. And what is value improvement? Well, originally, I got so angry at all the stupid strategy professors. Uh, I won't name them, but they're named in some of my books, who they're full of blah, 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 blah. And at the same time, some of the professors say 90 to 95% of all strategy efforts are total failures. So there's something wrong with strategy. And I got really tired of the blah, blah, blah. So I said, look, even the word strategy is a stupid word, because if you ask a simple question, why does anybody do this strategy thing? The primary purpose is to improve values, right? So, what is strategy? It's really the means, the design, the architecture, the solution, but it's not the main point. The main point is to improve values. So I said, let me just throw out that word strategy totally as distracting. It's almost as bad as the word agile, which distracts from delivering values. Same problem. Okay. And let me create a new discipline called value improvement, which is completely focused on delivering value. And yeah, there are some design and strategy things in there somewhere, but that's neither here nor there. That's a secondary supporting mechanism. Anyway, have this method. It's free. You can have it. You can have the whole book. Okay. Now, in the book, I wrote down a one-page summary of 10 principles, which sort of try to sum up this value improvement method, which is my default option for doing the delivery of values efficiently. So here's that. I'm going to go through every one of these on one slide each. So don't worry if you don't get time to read it just now, because you're going to get time to read the first one here and now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give that one principle, talk about it. Lovely little diagram. Thank you very much, Chat GPT. And then I'm going to give you, guess what? Another free book. So for value principle, I'm going to give you a book called Value Management. It's free. Share it with your friends. Make it a Christmas gift. I don't care. Birthday gift, probably. Okay. So the value first principle is what I've been harping on all the time here. We need to do stakeholder value analysis. What values do they want? Then we need to commit to delivering the values. Those are the value requirements or value objectives. And that is to be the prime driver, the main thing, what we're all about. If you like, every management review of what you're doing should have just one question and a one-page answer. What values have you delivered recently? End of discussion. I don't care if you've done agile or value first or safe or Scrum. Have fun. I don't care. I just want to know you promised some values. Did you do anything last week to move towards them, to deliver them? Are they in our organization? Are they giving any stakeholders any joy? That's it. That's value first. That simplifies the whole management of this. In a sense, everything else technical is like a black box. In other words, I don't care what's in there, and I don't care what's called Scrum or SAFe or value improvement or strategy planning. All I care about as a manager is we are getting better in critical dimensions that we've decided we want to get. Oh, very simple. Anyway, you want to know how to do that in practice with practical, quantified techniques? Free book called Value Management. Yeah, that's me outside my summer cabin on the Oslo Fjord. That's my private lighthouse there, believe it or not. And there's some islands in the background. And all the ships going to Oslo go right past my place. I wish I could charge them a toll or something like that. Number two, the stakeholder values need to be quantified. We cannot continue with the politicians and managers' bullshit culture of saying extremely competitive, very high security, and other highly ambiguous terms for the values. Values, if you're going to take them seriously and do them right and be accountable for them, you have to quantify them unconditionally, no exceptions. Now, what a lot of people say, yeah, well, of course that's true, Tom, but some of those values are soft, like peace and harmony and user friendly and security and things like that. And say, no, I'm going to tell you something. You may not believe it. You don't have to believe it. But absolutely all critical stakeholder values can be articulated with a scale of measure, like bits per second, volts, so that we can talk about how much we want and how much we got last week and how much we had when we started. Now, if you don't know how to do that, and I recognize people don't, I got two options for you. Yeah, my free book, How to Quantify Values. There's a method to it. But there's something even simpler if you don't want to bother to read the book. Ask your friendly AI to quantify for you. Okay. Short story. A friend of mine was very skeptical. He said, Tom, you cannot quantify human happiness. Now, I've been through that before, and I know you can. The United Nations does it every year. They have an international human happiness survey. Norway and other Nordic countries are at the top there. I think Finland is number one. Britain is about number 13, and US is not very happy bunnies, like number 27. Anyway, I said, let's ask AI if it can define scales of measure so we can quantify human happiness. So I said, give me 10 ways of defining human happiness. You can try this right now while I'm talking. It did. And I had a suspicion it had a very much larger number than 10, like close to infinity. So I said, if I asked you to give me 10,000 different ways of quantifying human happiness, could you do it? And the AI system said, no. I said, how many could you do? Quantification of human happiness. It said 1,450. Why could you only do 1,450? Answer, no surprises here, because that is all I have been trained on up to now. Try it yourself. How many ways can you measure human happiness? If you want to get control of your human happiness in your family for yourself, you might like to read my free book called Life Design. Okay. And look it up. Or ask me. And we quantify the happiness of people, and then we design our professional and family lives using these methods. Anyway, you have to quantify, or it will not be taken seriously, and it won't happen. That's one of those things that the agile people never really understood, but I've been talking about for 50 years since my software metrics book, 1976. Number three, impact. Okay, everybody's got an idea how to do it, and you can have arguments about it. We ought to use that method and that tactic and that strategy and that technology. And maybe the boss who has the most power wins if they're willing to finance it, or maybe the loudest voice in the room, or the greatest fad, doing things agile or something like that. Anyway, I believe that any solution or strategy or design or architecture should be put on a table, and we should estimate how good it is in relation to our values. Here's a whole book on it called Value Impact Estimation, with a technique I've invented called Impact Estimation Table. You ought to estimate how good the solutions are, and you ought to estimate with objective evidence, like we measured it in 10 other companies like ours is a pretty good start. Therefore, that's a good reason for doing it. Or if somebody says, well, nobody's ever used it, it was very sexy and very new, that's kind of dodgy and kind of risky, because turns out that means nobody knows. And sometimes it's better to go with the known rather than the sexy. Okay. Yeah. Number four. Okay. We need to prioritize what we're going to do in, you might like to call them sprints. I call them value delivery steps or EVO steps. You might like, and here's, by the way, a book on priority engineering, which I just wrote last year. Kind of fun, very deep, uh, free. I believe knowledge should be free and freely shared. So the um, the way in which we prioritize should be the efficiency. In other words, we should prioritize whatever designs give us the most value for the lowest cost, right? Or if you like, profit or return on investment or value for money, as David Cameron used in his election campaign years ago. Okay. So that's called, otherwise known as efficiency. Okay. So that should be, we shouldn't prioritize things because the boss said it. We should prioritize it because we've estimated how much value we will probably give based on experience and knowledge, and how what it will cost based on experience and knowledge. And we should objectively choose the one that does us the most good for our limited resources. Doesn't that sound like a rational idea? It's called it's I'm talking engineering all the time. See, engineering. And I know that's alien for many of you. Sorry about that. But the engineers of the world are going to rule, and the intuitive people are not going to rule with large, complex systems. So become an engineer or get out of the business, or just keep on coding little programs and have fun. That's a stream of value. Now, here's the value stream looked at from another point of view. We need to deliver, not literally as a stream, but we need to deliver small increments, like every week is what I prefer, and then measure how well they did and learn from that measurement. And I call these weekly chunks evolutionary value delivery steps, or EVO steps, or value increments. Okay. And there's a whole book on it, how you do it, how you divide things up properly to do it, but called EVO. And that is my agile book. That is the agile book, in my opinion, far superior to these Scrum and safe things and stuff like that. But you make up your own mind, of course. Nice. Principle number 6, there's a knowledge stream. Every time you deliver something and you measure the values you delivered, the costs, how well it works, the reaction of all the stakeholders, you're learning something. And I think we all appreciate that we should be learning all the time, that agile is, with its cyclical nature, a learning opportunity. That's why we have retrospectives and things like that, although I think they're not very well done. And so I'm very strong in learning. If you want to go really deep into learning, here's a free book called Knowledge Eduneering, or Ken book. And it does things like, what are the multi-dimensional qualities of knowledge and how do you quantify them? It was really deep. Okay. So, but uh, we need to manage the knowledge stream, and we need to do it better than a stand-up retrospective. We need to digitally capture the information and use artificial intelligence to analyze the information and put it together with your whole plan and everything else. So we need much more intelligent knowledge stream management, and there's no reason why we can't do it easily and cheaply with AI and these other engineering methods. Peace, brother. Now, principle number 7. If I think I'm going to get twice as much security next week with my new great security design, and then I measure it and I get half as much security, it got worse. Oh shit. There's a deviation between what I hoped for and expected and bet on. I built it and I installed it, and what I got. That's called deviation. And if you learn from it, say, oh my God, what am I going to do in practice here? I can't just keep on going with something that makes everything worse. I'd better learn early. That's the great advantage of agile methods, is you can learn early and fix things before they go on for years and years and billions, called deviation learning. Okay. So we need to learn from it. By the way, that book on cost engineering that I pointed to, that had the dynamic design to cost, also has dynamic design to values. That is deviation learning, and that is practiced by famous businesses very successfully. It's not a wild idea, it's an old idea. And principle number 8, alignment. Okay. Um, uh, I learned working amongst managers that they kept on complaining that the organization, that's us IT people, were not well aligned with the top management prerogatives, not prerogatives, priorities and policies. And we kept on, doing things like digital implementations that had no relationship to what management actually wanted. And management was dumb enough to fund it because they sort of hoped something good would come from it. So alignment. I showed this to a friend of mine who used to train the mega rich families of America's children. And I said, Simon, you're probably not very interested in alignment. He said, oh, no, that's what the mega rich families are very concerned with, because the children spend the fortune in silly ways. And we all know of millionaire stories where they dissipated the Rockefeller fortune, etc. Then these families are very worried that they're not aligned with the values of the founders who built the fortune, and so sort of ruining the hard work of the people who got rich. Think Musk's children spending in frivolous ways and not really building any cars or rocket ships or anything else. Anyway, so alignment. Now, alignment means alignment between the management objectives and the strategies, and between the IT requirements and the IT design. And there's a whole set of levels of this. Pamela, who's with us, helped me improve this diagram about an hour ago. Thanks, Pamela. You're getting adequate credit here. And that last bit Brock did for us. Principle number 9, responsibility. My stepfather used to always talk about Mr. Nobody did it. Whatever it was that happened in the family went wrong. We 3 children would certainly not admit to it. And my mother probably didn't do it anyway, but Mr. Nobody did it. And now, if you want to get things done, actually, Elon Musk has a principle. He says a named person must be responsible for delivering that requirement. A named person, nothing less, not just the gang, the team, or something like that. He wants a person he can eyeball and say, you didn't deliver that, but you promised it. Okay. So I've got a whole paper on responsibility, accountability, and governance. There it is. And I think it's a very important principle that somebody feels personally responsible. By the way, you don't impose upon them an unreasonable responsibility. That's bad. Okay. You say, you suggested this. Are you willing to take responsibility for it if I fund it? Now, if they say yes, their name is on it. And they ought to be motivated to make it work no matter what problems get in the way, no excuses. And that's good responsibility, healthy responsibility. Okay. That, by the way, is Eleanor Roosevelt, and I've got a whole story about Eleanor, which I'll do the short version. When I traveled on the SS Rhindam over the Atlantic in 1956, 2 of her grandsons were on board, and they were our age, so we got to know them really well and still do. So that's our little interaction with the Roosevelt family. But very interesting lady, wasn't she? Yeah, responsibility for value delivery. And number 10, and last, my God, we're only 39 minutes after the hour. So we need to be realistic. Now, we don't want to oversimplify, and yet we don't want to overwhelm. So oversimplifying is when you only think about the user or the customer, and you're always oversimplifying. There are 10 other very interesting stakeholders, and if you don't deal with them, your project will fail, even if it makes the users and the customers happy, because it'll make the European Union angry at you and they will lock you out of the market and fine you $800 million. So European Union and the laws are a stakeholder, and by eliminating them, as Apple and Google did from their consideration, it gets costly. Okay. Oh, by the way, over to Donald Duck. At my age, I'm good at multitasking. I can listen, ignore, and forget all at once. By the way, I just turned 85, and I'm good at that. By the way, little book about multi-thinking. Multi-thinking is a book about, for goodness sakes, don't, it's very tempting to simplify to one stakeholder, one value, one architecture, one budget. Very tempting, but it doesn't work. You may have noticed. And the reason it doesn't work is that those other things that you weren't willing to spend the mental energy to do anything about. So this book is an argument that, sorry, guys, you got to grow up and deal with multiple things simultaneously. Yes, it is difficult, but hey, I have some tools for you, like the impact estimation table, which makes it easy to deal with 10 stakeholders and 10 values and 10 designs. No problem. Earlier, we called the thing a spreadsheet, and it made thinking about financial things a lot easier too. Okay, so we need a realistic number of things. We can't, there's no point in having 100 stakeholders and 100 requirements. That's silly. But there's no point in having one or two either. What I do in practice is I take the first top 10 of everything, the top 10 critical stakeholders, I mentioned this earlier, the top 10 values, the top 10 designs. I prioritize and I pull them in my agile or Evo process, and I do them. And when I've done them, I say, right, now I can take the next 10 and I can continue that until there are no more left, whether it be 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. I don't care. When there's no more left that pays off to look at, you stop. That is when you're done. Famous arguments about when are we done. We're done when we've delivered all the profitable values to the interesting, powerful stakeholders. So I'm actually done with the talk. We have 18 minutes, but I just this last week I wrote two new books, so I thought I'd share them with you just for fun. This book I wrote on Sunday morning between midnight and 6 a.m. called Black Box Planning. What's it about? Well, it's sort of in the spirit of this talk. It's not about processes, it's about solving problems. Okay. And actually, there's a chapter I wrote specially for Pamela about film finance, which she's going to do her doctoral thesis on. So I expect Pamela will be working on the book with me. Anyway, free copy if you'd like it. It's kind of fun. What it does, it says, we have a new opportunity to deal with IT methods, and that's to hide the methods and make them more complex and detailed inside the black box. So only the AI tool has to worry about learning them and doing them. People could just focus on getting good results out of the black box. In other words, a series of solved problems. And it's quite fascinating, the consequences, which I've managed to write up 8 of the consequences. So I think that's kind of fun. And I've got 3 case studies there showing how to do it. A young student contacted me early last week from Goldsmiths College in London, and he had worked in the finance business, so he was doing a dissertation on leveraged buyouts. And he was very interested in learning to quantify the values and qualities of leveraged buyouts. So you could, ask the fair question, should we really buy this? And how much should we pay? So I guess what they do. But I took one look at it and said, you're absolutely right that you can and should quantify more than just financial values, the qualities of the organization and things like that and their products. But I believe you can do more. So I wrote a whole book, it's a short one, on LBO engineering, new term. And I've gone into considerable detail about how to do it. That was Sunday morning. Yesterday, I wrote the book. Have fun if you're interested in LBO or financial engineering. And that is really it. I have an appendix with more detail, including detail about the value improvement, but I'm going to stop quarter to the hour. We're planning sort of, and I will stop share, and I will look at all your lovely faces and invite questions, discussion, or go off for dinner.
Thank you so
Be
much
nice if,
for your down-to-earth explanation of the DAV system. I particularly like the quote that you mentioned about harmony and balance. It's not maximizing harmony and balance. Is a great takeaway for me today. And thank you also for talking about the other books. I'm particularly interested in the black box planning. I think that's something that would help very much with stakeholders, because if we're looking into the critical and we are looking into reaching as much as possible, if we have something that has an interface that is simple, is going to be much more helpful.
you got it. I didn't say that as well as you just said it, but it's about having an incredibly simple interface, which is I just want to solve my problem. I don't want to know about your stand-up retrospectives.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Um,
And I guess open microphone or raise your hand or whatever. Thank you, Araj. And
yes,
you're all welcome to contact me by email. It's on the screen. Ask questions, ask for things that I've offered, like the life design book where you don't know where to get it. It's free. And love to talk to you and know what you think and what you're doing. And if you want to cooperate on any of the projects.
Peter is asking, is there a book on quantifying the value?
Yes, it is the quantiering book that I cited in the. Actually, there are many books I've written, but the quantiering book that I cited and gave you the free link to is the primary book. It says the how-to. But again, there's a method for doing it. I won't get into it here now, which I've learned manually. But right now, it's incredibly simple. Ask your favorite AI, help me quantify. Help me quantify love. Help me quantify happiness. Help me quantify any soft value. It will deliver it for free. I use all the free versions of these AI systems personally. Why should I pay if I can get it for free, right?
Can I use that to quantify the value of Tom Gilb talks?
Yes. And you can write a little paper about it. But I'll give you the first clue, and it's one of the a thing we learned long ago is one reason people can't quantify some of these soft values is that they are not one-dimensional. They're multidimensional. Like usability has 12 dimensions we know of. Maintainability of software has 15 dimensions we know of. They're in my competitive engineering book, chapter 5, for free. Okay. So one of the big tricks that engineers taught me was that if you want to quantify something and you can't quite figure out how to do it, if you decompose it into its constituent elements or parts, turns out each one of them is a lot easier to quantify. In other words, decomposition of a complex value is a prerequisite for simple quantification. Now, I learned that decades ago. I tried to teach it to people. It's in all my books. It's like in the 20-year-old competitive engineering book, free copy. By the way, at the end of the slides is references. And if I've referenced any book like Life Design or Competitive Engineering, the free download is in the back of the slides. Okay?
Thanks,
and yeah, so so you could decompose Tom Gilb holding a talk or lecture into 10 different elements of the talk and quantify them. And then, we could quantify how good my talk was.
I thought it was great for what it's worth. Unsophisticated method, but
so we need to decompose great into
we do
10 aspects of greatness.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat, and Peter, you got your answer. It's the Quantier book primarily, but there's another book called Value value requirements, you'll find VR in the back. And that also goes very deeply in how to quantify the values and qualities. So let's see. Okay, Okay, I'm again looking at the chat, and you're welcome to open your microphone and to shout a question, or raise your Zoom hand.
In the meantime, I have a question. I'm sure it must be in one of your books. If there is, also you can point me to it. As you were talking about the multi-dimension of values, privacy in particular, is something that you have worked with in the past, and how many dimensions does it have, and how difficult it is to quantify, and challenges that you have found?
Right. Okay. I believe I've done privacy. Now, it'd take more minutes than we have left for me to dig it up. Let's put it this way. If you send me an email, Maria, send me your privacy things, you'll get it. Promise. I'll do it. Now, lacking that, here, just a moment. Let's see. Get rid of the chat. I'm going to bring up, I'll bring up Grok. I'll then go in Zoom to share. And there's my friend Grok. Okay. Give me 10 scales of measure for privacy, like EU law. I assume you can all see my Grok screen?
We can see it.
Right. Oh, please try again. Let's see. That was not good for sure. Just a moment. I'll try friend Chat GPT. Can you see Chat GPT?
Not yet.
Okay, so I have to go to Zoom and Zoom and share. Okay. Share. Now I go to Chat GPT. They could have designed a better interface here, is my short reaction. Okay. List 10 privacy value or quality scales of measure with URL to more detail. You got it?
Yeah.
So you can all replicate that. All you need is the prompt. So that's the answer. It's amazing what it knows that I don't know, and I never figured out. And not least little things like, not only do you get the scale idea, but you get reference to, for example, international standards for the scale, right? That kind of thing.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Here's one of them. Cornell University Technical Privacy Metrics, a systematic survey. What more do you want, madam? Better than I could give you. There it is. The perfect paper.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Good question, Maria. Thank you. Okay, so let me get back. I'm going to stop share. Yeah. Okay, notice how easy that was, and how cheap it was, and how much deeper it is than I can't give you such a good answer, but it can. So, yeah.
There is another question from Kirsten.
Yes.
Could you use this?
Oh,
you can read it. You can read it.
Yeah, I'll read it. Okay. Could use this technique to retrospectively quantify the value of a program of work? Yes. Simple answer. I'll comment on. My company is the held to ransom failure delivery that's late over budget. Yeah. Okay. So let's imagine management is very unhappy. It's late, it's over budget, and it hasn't delivered. By the way, according to the book How to Do Big Things by Bent Flyvbjerg, highly recommended, 99.5% of his 16,000 projects in his Oxford database, 99.5% fail on at least one count of delivering late, over budget, or not the benefits ever promised. So we have 0.5% capability of delivering on time, under budget, the benefits promised. This is not just IT. This is everybody, right? And he has a theory of how you do it better. Now, so let's say management is totally pissed off and looking for somebody to fire or something like that. So let's say they start an investigation, right? Now, part of the investigation would be saying, did this project ever quantify what they were supposed to do, the benefits? Now, the answer is probably no, or not always, okay? So fail, number one. Now, the question, the people managing projects should know that you must quantify critical qualities if that's the big thing you're doing, right? And if they don't know that, they're incompetent. You shouldn't hire them. You should retrain them at best. Okay? So now the next thing is, to answer your question more directly, if we would take the management bullshit that was in the PowerPoint slides where management approved the project and we quantified it, how would it look? Now, by the way, you can feed these into an AI systems and in 5 minutes get an example of a quantification. The answer is, you don't even have to know how to do it. You just have to ask, please do it. Quantify the bullshit slide. Seriously. And then you say, why in the hell didn't we do it? And the top managers will say, actually, nobody ever trained anybody in my company to do it. We did not have a policy, as in the principles I just showed you, of quantifying the values. So the top manager said, I will take responsibility. I did not make this happen. By the way, this happened at ICL, International Computers Limited, with Rob Wilmot. There is a case study of this in the free book called PPPP, where it was the top manager, Rob Wilmot, with 26,000 people in Britain in the ICL company, acknowledged that he had failed to make sure that they had quantified all their critical objectives. He then demanded, no nice guy, that all of his top managers quantify all of their 12 directorates, like mainframes and PCs and stuff like that, and defense. They quantified what they did. ICL at that point went from being losing money for the last 7 years. They went into profit for the next 15 years. The case study and the details of using my methods there are in the PPPP book. Take a look. But it takes a lot of balls for a top manager to say, I take responsibility. I am at fault. I let you directors fool me with your management bullshit, and I gave you power and budget. And that was wrong, and we're stopping it right now. You have 1 week to quantify. They did it, but they all needed a 3-hour coaching from me and Peter Hall to get it done. It's in the book. How we saved a major British institution until they gave it away to the Japanese, but that's another story.
Thank you so much again, Tom.